Good afternoon, folks. This is Deb Delapiana, and this is your Shut the Fuck Up Express. Today, as you know, we moved the stream to tonight from last night. So the fact that I'm doing a video should indicate something to you. In fact, I actually have 3 videos on my list to do. Don't think I'll get to them all today because the stream is tonight. But I can safely say that there will be one posted tomorrow before I leave for work. Okay? So today and tomorrow are definitely on. Today's video, I'm talking about 2 of the most repugnant politicians in the nation. So in the first one, we have a gentleman named, and I'm using that term very loosely. I think, a better term for Garrett Soldano is a bullshit artist. He refers to himself as a doctor. He's actually a chiropractor. He's not a doctor. Has no knowledge of internal medicine. Is not a specialist in infectious disease. And is not a virologist. In fact, what he is an opportunist. So he's running against Gretchen Whitmer, the evil Gretchen Whitmer, according to the right-wing nitwits out there in Michigan. I don't want to get too far off topic here because I've already expressed my feelings about Garrett Soldano. Garrett Soldano, who led the anti-lockdown movement out there, a man who led the charge to strip Gretchen Whitmer of her emergency powers, making her impotent in the middle of COVID increases, and then complaining that she's missing in action. That right there spells disingenuous pig for me. But the reason I write this is, as you know, he's running for governor on the Republican ticket, of course. And he's doing this series of videos, meet, the Soldano family. And I'm bringing this up because he's listing people who are his heroes. And there's the usual suspects, mommy and daddy. But then we get into the political figures, and one of his heroes is Martin Luther King, but his other hero is the orange jackaloon, Donald J. Trump. Now, I find that very hard to swallow, that you could have a man who could put those 2 people together as heroes. We're talking about Martin Luther King, who had a vision for his people that we are actually still trying to achieve in this country. In fact, because of Donald Trump, we have had a huge setback in Martin Luther King's dream in this nation. And it's disgusting and disheartening. But yet he can manage to put these 2 people on his list of heroes. Donald Trump, who, by the way, not only referred to Mexicans as criminals and rapists in his rants, but also asked the military if they could just shoot down black protesters in the streets after George Floyd was killed. I'm sorry, folks, but if you don't see that as just political pandering so he can pick up some black votes, you're pretty goddamn stupid. Garrett Soldano is a fraud, a liar, a medical misinformation specialist, has posed with his family with guns after the last school shooting. He is a classic right-wing shitbag. And he can shut the fuck up with his nonsense. The second repugnant Republican I would like to speak about today, and I'm going to pull up some information here because I want to be able to give it to you correctly, is Ron DeSantis, who now has filed a bill called the Stop Woke Act, which is actually an effort to ban critical race theory in Florida schools. So he is, as he says here in quotes, codify, quote, the Florida Department of Education's prohibition of teaching critical race theory in K-12 schools. It does ban critical race theory, but it goes further. It prevents teachers from defining, quote, American history as something other than the creation of a new nation based largely on universal principles stated in the Declaration of Independence. In other words, the teachers in Florida are going to be required by law to lie to students about American history. And by the way, let me remind everyone that the principles in the Declaration of Independence were not universal when that document was written. On the contrary, most black people were considered the property of white people when that document was written. They had no rights in this country. And by the way, Ron DeSantis knows this. But what he is doing here is lying to you because, you know what, quite frankly, the people on the right, they don't check anything out. Not that the people on the left are much better, but the people on the right don't check anything out, okay? This law would allow students and parents the right to sue any teacher who does not tell them that America was created, quote, largely on universal principles, end quote. They could collect attorney's fees and damages from teachers if they win. This is, very much built on the Texas abortion law, which was signed into law by the other repugnant Republican named Governor Greg Abbott. DeSantis has openly stated that this legislation is being filed to instill fear in teachers. And that's exactly what it's going to do. It prevents use of materials from the 1619 Project. And anyone using that material in a classroom setting can be sued. And DeSantis didn't do this alone. He enlisted Christopher Rufo. You probably won't recognize the name, but I did. Christopher Rufo, who is a right-wing operative who has been involved in a lot of this crap. And he did also, as you may have guessed, attach this announcement that he's proposing this law to a fundraising effort. The worst part of all of this is this quote right here. Quote, you think about what MLK stood for. He said he didn't want people judged on the color of their skin, but on the content of their character. End quote. That is a blatant attempt to convince the public that MLK would approve of what he's doing. I'm going to tell you something, and you can take this for what it is, or you can ignore it. We are approaching full frontal fascism in this country. When you are passing laws to keep teachers from teaching history as it really is and teaching white man's history, we are taking giant leaps backwards. And you know what? It is not just the teachers and the parents who know better that need to push back on this, but everybody in this nation that remains silent while all of this is going on are culpable in this. Ron DeSantis is going to run for president in 2024. And there is a chance that if Donald Trump doesn't get the nomination, that this pig will. I warn you people, ignore this at your peril. If you do not think that other Republican governors will take this cue and do the same thing, you're wrong. This is exactly how we're winding up with Roe v. Wade being overturned in the spring. Our rights are indeed slipping away, but it has nothing to do with COVID-19, masking, social distancing, and vaccines. While you're all preoccupied as the right wing dismantles public health, while you're all buying into that nonsense, your real rights are being stripped away. This country is headed fully down the wrong path, and people had better wake the fuck up. But as for these two guys, Ron DeSantis and Garrett Soldano, if I were them, I'd stop using Martin Luther King. You know, since when do they get to use the dead to justify their actions when that person can't speak for themselves any longer? They need to shut the fuck up. I'll talk to you all later.